everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Inbar Yagor. I'm the Director of Content and Product Marketing at Lusha. Lusha is a sales intelligence platform, which gives you very accurate contact data as well as intelligent buying signals so you can reach out to the right people at the right time. I am happy to introduce our amazing panelists for today. George Namour, who is the head of sales and business development at Lusha, and the famous, wonderful, amazing Brian Burns, the host of the Brutal Truth podcast. Let's go one by one. George, give a quick intro about you, what you do.
Great. Thank you, Inbar. My name is George Namour. I am the U.S. Director of Sales Business Development, and I lead the business development operations all the way from meeting with our customers, qualifying them, understanding what their needs are, to helping them find a solution that's going to help solve their business needs. And super excited to be part of this today.
Awesome. Brian.
Hey, I'm Brian Burns, host of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. You may have seen me walking around my neighborhood on LinkedIn, and just here, excited to talk to you about the buying committee and decision makers.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us. I always like to start these things with a poll, because then we can kind of see where everybody is. And so we've got a couple of questions that we want to ask. So I'm just going to launch the first question. If everybody who's online can kind of answer, let's answer the first question. How often does the topic of the buying committee come up when discussing your go-to-market strategy within your organization? Right. And so I'd love it if everybody who's online can answer. And then once we're going to let those answers run. And I guess while people are answering the poll questions, let's get this conversation started. So Brian, this webinar, funny enough, is called The Myth of the Buying Committee. Why is the buying committee a myth?
Well, I remember when it came out about 10 years ago, I read about it and I was like, clearly these people have never been on a sales call before. The idea that there's this organized, well-structured, methodical group of people who are assigned to buy our products, it's nice. It's kind of conventional logic. That's the way I would think it would work if I had never done it. But if you've been there on premise, in those meetings with your customers and prospects, and you hear the dialogue, it is everything but a well-organized, structured process. It's very ad hoc, and it's much more like House of Cards on Netflix than it is business. Meaning that everyone's out for their personal win, their turf, their territory, how it impacts them. And what if it's good for the company, that's good too. So I think as a salesperson, we have to understand how companies buy. And it's not this well-designed process that they are educated and trained on. It's very much ad hoc.
So you're telling me that as a decision maker in marketing, I don't actually have a secret cabal of people who I meet on a biweekly basis and thumbs up, some thumbs down on whether we're going to sign a deal?
You go into the cone of silence every Thursday between 3 and 5 and decide which products you're going to buy, right? That's how it works, isn't it?
Of course. No. So I think anybody who has made any sort of purchasing decision, I think this is true for you as well, George, it doesn't happen that way. Not even close. Most of these conversations are never had in a formal meeting, right? And most of these conversations are had in the hallway more than anything else. So let's talk a little bit. You talked about the political kind of aspect of it. Giving the House of Cards reference. Can you talk a little bit more about that? About what does that look like?
Yeah, because let's take it from a sales rep's perspective. Whether it's inbound or outbound, we think selling is a lot like the simple sale, where you get that one person interested enough to say, yes, I want your product. And in the B2C space, that's great. They're the decision maker, the sole decision maker. They may ask their friends, their spouse, the guy walking by what they think. But in B2B, it's very different, meaning that end user buyer most likely has zero budget authority and little to no understanding of the politics internally, the administrative process, and what the company requires to legally commit to buying a product. And that is where the danger is. And that's what happens. All these deals go to no decision. We have somebody who wants our product, loves our product, needs our product. The company can afford the product, but they tell us, or they don't tell us, as most often, they say, oh, it's stuck in procurement, or it's going through the process, when it's really stuck in someone's email box. And they don't know what to do. They're kind of overwhelmed, and they forecasted it. And now their manager says, well, call the CEO or call the CIO or call the CFO. And they do, and they find out it's really nowhere.
Wait, so there is a buying committee? There's a CEO, there's a CFO.
There's lots of people. Right. They're just not tightly coupled. They're loosely coupled.
Right.
Meaning that, yes, you have to get their approval and their buy-in, but it's not their job to buy. Right. They have their full-time job.
Right. So I'm gonna challenge you. No, I don't know if challenge is the word, right? I've been a VP marketing. I'm gonna kind of enforce what you're saying, right? Even as a VP, my purchase power was very low. Like I had a budget and I had stuff I wanted to buy, but even when I budgeted for it and wanted to buy it, it was still not a done deal, not even on my end, right? Yes. And so if you're selling to me, what do you do to make sure I bring this through to an actual deal?
Well, I would ask you, who has to approve it? What's your sign off? Okay, so now you have the political power to do it, but there's political risk in doing it.
Right.
Right. If it's 5K, not much risk. If it's 50K, a lot more risk. If it's 100K, even though you talked about it in Q4, had the board's approval, you might want to run it by them one last time before you bring it down to procurement, don't you?
Yeah.
In case it touches on someone's toes.
Yeah.
Or the timing isn't right, or maybe you should make it go faster or slower, and how it makes you appear within the company and how it affects other people.
So let's get for a second to the nitty gritty of this, right? George, you manage a whole lot of SDRs and BDRs. They have that first conversation, right? Like when Brian talks about understanding that there's relationships to be had and you need to kind of understand where the sign off is. When do you start that decision when you have the first conversation with a prospect? Like when does that come in, do you think?
Always. I think that you have to have the expectations and know that there are going to be newer roles and responsibilities that and oversight coming along the way. What you might know from their first conversation and discovery from a prospect is going to be a lot different. 4 calls in and a couple weeks longer in a sales cycle, or even 6 to 12 months if you're selling enterprise solutions, and that can be even greater. So I think what we're seeing in today's world is organizations are more risk averse. Therefore, it's not so much of a buying committee like a secret cult that meets every Thursday night and says, let's not buy these tools, let's go with this tool because they're great. It's more about oversight and influence to avoid the risk of one, bringing on the wrong solution that won't solve the biggest pains and challenges for that organization, because the risk of bringing that on impacts a greater scope of people than not doing anything in some cases. So that's why a lot of these companies are going cold. And I think to avoid that, it's on us as salespeople to, from that initial conversation earlier on, build the trust, act as a consultant, right? Know your buyer. And I think that takes a lot more than knowing what features, solutions, or services help solve for these prospects. I think it's more about becoming a subject matter expert for your specific industry, the lines of businesses that you're supporting. For example, at Lucia here, we support go-to-market teams, and that consists of sales, marketing, sales ops, mark ops, anyone involved in that customer journey, the engagement to signing and bringing on customers. So through that conversation, whether you're establishing influencers or internal sponsors, I think the only way to gain as much visibility as you can into that organization is by earning that trust. And you do that by building value and staying away from self-serving.
So let me wrap this back into practicalities, right? We've got this poll running. A lot of people have answered. We'll share the results in a little bit. The second question here, right, is when selling to multiple buyers, what's the most common challenge, right? We've got 45% of people saying accessing and engaging with the right decision makers within the organization. So Brian, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about
access
that.
Is what does that look like, right? How do you, as a salesperson, talk your contact through that?
Well, it's a trap, essentially, because most of the people we're talking to think they know how the company buys because they need it. They want it. It solves a company problem. They're the expert. So they think that they are the sole decision maker. And early in my career, I used to always ask the classic question, who is the final decision maker? And there'd be 5 engineers in the room and they'd all raise their hand.
Right.
So clearly they're not the decision makers. Well, they make the decision about which product they like, which product they are going to eval, which product they will recommend. But they have zero budget authority. So when they bring the quote down to procurement goes, that's not the way it works here.
Yeah.
Right. And then go talk to your manager. They'll teach you how. Because they get tired of dealing with people coming with little wish lists of things, their Amazon wish list. This is what I'd like this season. They don't care. Someone has to fill out a purchase request. Someone has to approve it. And companies typically have a budget authorization amount. And this is insanely low. Yeah. And you'd be surprised. I've been in the CEO's office that last Friday of the quarter at 4:30 with my phone buzzing from my vice president, my CEO, where's that order? And the CEO doesn't know how to get the deal done administratively. He calls procurement. Procurement manager comes in and goes, well, where's the purchase request? Where's this? Where's that? Has legal reviewed this? And all of a sudden, the buying committee shows up around 5:05 on a Friday night.
Always.
And we're working through the issues.
And it's the last day of Q4.
It's the last day of the quarter.
Yeah.
And typically the stuff doesn't get done unless there's enormous pressure, time pressure, pricing pressure, quarterly pressure. But if you know that's the way it works, why don't you gain access to those people as you need them or right before you need them? So it isn't the first time they hear about this.
So you were in sales for like a bit, right?
A bit.
So what is the tried and true way that you used to go about getting the right people in the room to make sure?
Well, I would always my style was to go one-on-one because I believe when you have more than one person in a meeting, honesty goes down exponentially. One-on-one is the best open, honest conversation you get. So you know the trail of approval that your purchase request is going to take. If it's over 50K, it's most likely going to go to the CEO. And if the CEO is hearing about this at Friday at 4:50 on the last day of the quarter, they feel pressured and uninformed. And guess what people under pressure and uninformed do? They find any reason on earth not to make a decision. And they push it back and your deal starts all over again. So it's first day of the quarter, start over again. Let's restudy the market. So you need to understand that trail of approval, both politically and administratively. But politically, you also got a lot of people who this is going to hurt. Somebody's toes are going to get stepped on. Somebody's job may be eliminated. So you got to anticipate that.
Is it really that dramatic? Somebody could lose, do you think that as a salesperson, that's a big thing, right? If you're a salesperson, obviously trust, right, is one thing that you have to come in and decide, but where is the place where you need to protect your contact and your champion? And where's the place where you need to go around your champion, or,
Well, you never want to get in the situation where your champion's saying, don't worry, don't contact anybody here, I'll get this done. That means your deal will never happen.
Right.
Or 20% likely, or 5% likely.
Yeah.
You got to work with them. And you got to also anticipate that they're going to tell you, don't go talking to anybody else, which means they have no authority to even be looking at this. So I typically would contact all the people in the decision path, not to have a meeting with them, but maybe connect with them on LinkedIn, mention something that they posted, go from unknown to known.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your new role.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I feel I have the technical win where they're picking me versus the alternatives. See, reps think that's the deal. That's not the deal. That's part of the deal. Then I would start the dialogue with those people, either directly or with my manager or my counterpart at my company.
So I'm gonna volley this over to George. Oh, before I forget, there is one thing I forgot to say. We've got, if anybody has questions, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. I promise you, we're gonna leave plenty of time for questions. So don't worry about that. So I'm gonna volley this over to George, right? So George, you've talked about this often, right? Like specifically at Lucia, we talk to a lot of SDRs, right? And it's not, and sometimes the SDRs need to be champions for the product. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you do in situations where not even necessarily, like maybe you're talking to like a director of sales, but you know that you need to get to his VP or, the CRO. What do you do to make that happen? Usually, George.
Yeah. I think it's very key here to understand that like every user, every person has their specific role. I think most importantly for our users and end users, they need to have a valuable experience. They need to see some wins from our solution and then be able to quantify what they're able to gain with Lucia to their leadership. Otherwise, we haven't earned the trust or even the right to have that conversation with their leadership team, managers, or directors. So when you do that, it makes that conversation much easier when you're having a conversation with the purchase influencers or the decision makers, and it turns your users, end users, into your champions to get this tool internally. And I think just like becoming an expert in your sector and understanding the industries that you sell into, becoming an expert into how do you demonstrate value to a director level, a VP level, because what they'll see as valuable is going to be completely different as to what our end users are seeing as well. And that's something that we often run into today, where users will come to us, they're evaluating a solution for their organization, and then what we're going to be measuring the proof of concept on or the trial on is completely, the set of criteria is very different than what the director and then what the manager might care about and might see success from. So I think being able to prepare, make the assumption for what these types of personas care about, but also don't make too much of an assumption that you're completely misguided and misdirected. And then use this, leverage customer win stories with your prospect that tie back to similar organizations that you're supporting, speak your customer's language to be able to highlight where these folks will see the value of it. So in short, expect what roles you're going to see in terms of getting a solution in place at an organization, and then cater your value proposition to specifically support and validate the fit of your solution for those specific roles that you're going to be dealing with.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to that I've sold to a lot of different personas in my life. I found that the most complicated, hardest persona to crack is usually the software guys, because they literally the situation that you described is a perfect example, like, of what usually happens when you sell to an audience. I hope there's no developers on this call. I doubt there are. Because there, not everybody has the social skills or the political skills to really help, right? So you've become best friends with Joe, who heads up, software development at company X. Joe's not going to be able to make a good pitch for you, right? Like, he's not. He was not. I'm married to a software developer. I would not put him on a sales call, even if, like, never.
Oh, he convinced you of something.
I don't know if I can. No, we'll see. Maybe I convinced him. It's a question. I think it was. I was the one doing the convince. 15 years in, I can be honest about that. So 2 kids too. So right. So Brian, let's go back to the software developers. Like,
yes.
what do you do? Because they don't have the social, political, or sorry for the stereotype.
That was my market. I sold to software developers my whole career. And you're 100% right, because their viewpoint is, I've got a job to get done. I've found the solution. I've tested it out. I'm positive this is the best the market has. Buy it. And they have that kind of attitude. I need it. They will buy it. Well, that's not the way the world works, because maybe the manager understands that, but the person above that goes, I don't know what the thingamajiggy does. The flux capacitor has no economic meaning to me. And your word that you need it gets a little bit further. But what happens if we don't buy it? And this is what happens. And they go, well, they're dumb. Well, that doesn't get you a deal, and it doesn't get you your commission. Mm-hmm. And George's point about the managers have to understand what it means to them. If you're selling technology, you've got to articulate that both economically and comparing it against the alternatives, and what happens if we don't buy it. There's a cost associated with that. And everybody looks at the cost of each ingredient of the cookie instead of the whole cookie. Cookies without sugar don't taste good.
So something that a lot of that I've often seen when I get pitched a solution is they have a conversation with me, and then even if I say it's not my decision, okay, well, I'll send you a one sheet that you can then spread around, or I'll send you a deck so you can share this, right?
Who needs Netflix when you have a bunch of decks to look at at night?
I know, right? So let's put a scenario up for both of you. Either you can answer this, right? So you just talked to Joe. Joe loves your solution. I don't know. I hope that I keep on using the name Joe. Lord knows why. So you just talked to Joe. Joe thinks you're amazing. You're the bee's knees. He wants to sign off. He's all good, right? And then you go, okay, well, let's get this deal done. And just as well, give me something I can give my manager. Or so what do you do in that case, right? Because they're not going to say, oh, yeah, I need to talk to this guy, and this guy. And, you send a one sheet. What do you do to get Joe to champion you and not just forward an email?
Yeah. You wouldn't want to rely on a piece of content. You do want to document it, because because nobody's going to entertain all these products over the quarter. There's a short window, so it has to be articulate. Why are we doing this? What do we get out of it? Did you study the market? Why is this the best alternative? Why do we need to do it now? What do we get out of it? What happens if we don't do it? Mm-hmm. That's what the leader is thinking. Because if they can wait, if they can push it back, or why don't we already have something that already does this? If you're selling to a 10,000 person company, they're probably standardized on someone's stack. Doesn't Oracle have something that does this? Salesforce have something to do this? I bet IBM's got 5 things that does this.
Mm-hmm. So this is about homework on a lot of levels, right, George? Like, yes. So how much homework, George, do you coach your people to do before they get into a conversation?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot, right? I think pre-call prep is part of the call structure, and it's not even part of a call. I think that it's also important to know that our buyers, by the time they're engaging with us, they've also done their homework, right? In today's world, everything's on the web, everything's review based. You already know what you want before you're engaging with that organization. So as sellers here and as consultants, we have to kind of make that assumption that people who are coming here ready, they're exposed to our solution and how we may help, how we might be able to help them. But what they're not exposed to is like, where are we going to add value in areas that they're not aware of, right? How are we going to help them get better? And I think it's on us to take ownership of that and educate our customers as to how our software is typically purchased. So what I've done in the past is I've warned my buyers of, hey, can you send me a recording of a demo? And I'm going to share it with my CEO. I don't think a CEO has 30 minutes to watch a recorded demo of, people having a conversation and a 15-minute kind of demo dump and feature and functionality dump. But I think it's on us to educate our buyers that, hey, it's our job to sell the solution. I would be doing you a disservice to let you sell this internally on your own. So it's also a follow-up of like, have you done this before? Like Brian mentioned, what happens if you don't get this in place? Is the business aware of the implications of the cost of doing nothing? But it's also on us to leverage that to uncover what it's like to bring a solution on board to your organization, and how do we get those people involved. So I think taking ownership of guiding our buyers through the buyer journey. I think in what we've done in these situations is create joint execution plans, which, we get someone that's super excited about a solution. They see the value in it. That's great. Let's work together on implementing this tool for you internally. If you do see the value in it, you believe in it, I'm assuming there is trust built here. Let's work together to bring this internally. And, instead of mapping out next steps and just kind of blindly throwing things on a calendar, really sit down and map out a joint execution plan for you to share in an email, have the customer agree upon, and then work together to implement that solution in place.
Right, Brian, anything to add to that specifically?
Yeah, I think reps have to understand how critical this is, because what the analysts do get right is that 80% of your deals, the best deals, the forecasted deals, slip or stall or start over because of this. So as a sales leader, look at that forecast. That's why it slips, is the buyers, they're not trained. No, they don't go to buying and decision-making school.
Yeah.
And if they don't have enough energy and desire, they'll give up. We do this all day. We see it all day. We know how it works. We have to guide them, hold their hand through this process, even when they don't want it or don't think they need it.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually end. The poll's been running for a while. I want to end it just so everybody can see like some of the results on everything. And the last question is, what change do you make to your sales approach when selling to big companies? Because let's be, we've got some people here. We've got some great questions going on in the Q&A. We'll start kind of addressing them as we go along. There's government organizations, right, that are big and complex. We've got one of the attendees asking, our local government customers often have to present to their local board for approval. How does this dynamic work? There's, a big technical team in a big company that becomes a huge endeavor. And I'm seeing this question coming up in the Q&A a lot. So let's talk a little bit about what happens. If you're selling to an organization of 100 people, that's a completely different conversation than you're selling to an organization of 10,000 people. I want to talk about both of those. Let's start with the 10,000 people organization. And what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I sold public sector for 25 years. So, all intelligence community stuff. state and local, all of that. And it's really difficult because you have typically the user buyer is a system integrator, doesn't work, is not a government employee, works independently on a contract funded by the government. Mm-hmm. So you've got the buying process. It's the administration that's the most difficult. You get the person, I want this, I need it, I can afford it. Great, let's go. But now we have to, okay, let's go to the contracting manager and then the agency. And this is what I did better than my competitors. When I went after a deal, I sold to the agency and the system integrator and the person who was doing the purchasing, which was typically a contract holder. So the government doesn't buy directly because they don't want any liability. Mm-hmm. They don't want you and me suing them.
Right.
So they put out these contracts where they buy it through a contract. So you have to have all these things in place. And you have to understand what drives them. Each of them is very independent.
So apart from doing your persona research, right? So when you're talking about these three different people, like you literally sold to all of them the same product at once?
You're not selling so much the product as how to get this done.
Okay. So George talked a little bit about like setting up an execution plan and, working with your champion to make sure that, they know what every step of the process is. Is that true for not just government organizations, like your IBMs or your Apples or your big corporations of the world? Like, is that hold true for big companies as much as it does for smaller companies? Right. Georgie, do you have any experience with that? You want to take that?
So I think the question is there truth behind doing a joint execution plan between small organizations and bigger companies?
Yeah, is there a difference? Like does the execution plan in your experience, and Brian, if you have anything to add here too, does that work in a big organization as well as it does in a smaller organization?
I think the sales rep has to take more ownership of it because we know how to do it. You don't want Joe engineer presenting your product and mega flips and bitty jigs and all the other things. They talk about features and functions of what they need. They talk in their language. The project manager needs to get it done on time, under budget. They have their needs. The government wants it functional, reliable, dependable, doesn't want to make mistakes, and wants it purchased legally and within a certain time period. Yeah. So that's a lot of responsibility to give an end user who has very little motivation compared to us. We have high motivation and hopefully higher knowledge about how to do it. And we really, that the single threadedness on a complex deal is usually the death knell. When you talk to your reps and you go, who have you talked to at the account? And that Joe comes up. Anyone else? No, deal's not going to happen. Unless Joe's a magic. Because Joe doesn't know what he's doing on the purchasing side. On the selection side, he's got it. But the purchase side, that's how it gets done.
So I'm hearing, do your research in advance, right? Be a partner, a teammate, a coach, a leader. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a bit of therapy in this also, right? Like
for everybody.
I feel like there's, in a lot of ways, I can tell you that I've always felt more comfortable through a buying process when I've established trust with the person who's selling to me. So let's talk a little, just a little bit about trust, because I think it's a big part of what we're talking about here continually. Like what are like, how do you really gain trust when you're selling to somebody, when you're in a sales process, because they know you're definitely selling me something, right? So there's automatically a bit of skepticism. What do you do to kind of overcome that, to get them to champion for you?
I think, well, trust, at least in my viewpoint, is that you're showing more interest in what they need than what you need. And people sense that immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about your marketing role, what are your objectives? What are your challenges in your way?
Mm-hmm.
And if we get to the point where you want the product, you need the product, you can afford the product, before you go to purchase it, go down to the CFO or procurement or even your CEO, typically, this is what we run into. Would you like to see what we've done with other clients to make sure that that meeting goes well?
Yeah.
Because who knows what kind of mood he or she is in at that moment that you approach them? What do they care about? What other products have they bought? What pushback do they typically give?
Mm-hmm.
Do they make decisions quickly, or do they want a little bit of time to get used to it? Do they want to talk to another client, a peer, another CEO in the marketplace, my CEO, an analyst, whoever it is?
Mm-hmm.
Try and not have it go to a binary. Oh, we're having the summit and the smoke will rise. If it's white smoke, we'll purchase. If it's black smoke, we won't. You don't want those meetings. You want the how and when we buy, not if we buy.
Yep. George, how do you coach your people to become consultants, really create a relationship and not just be, aggressively selling?
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done. I think big thing we're focusing on is stop selling and start listening, right? We have to stop selling features, functionalities, the solution. We have to listen to our the pain, the need that our customers are having. And I think we need to have a sense of empathy and transparency as well, right? Know that not everyone's going to be ready to buy, and that's okay. Just be cognizant of timing and work with them on it. And also, it's on you as a seller. It's your responsibility to demonstrate value, generate a sense of urgency to get the customer to commit. Because if the timing's off, it tells me that me as a seller, I haven't demonstrated enough value to justify the investment in our solution. And I think honesty comes along with it. If there is something that you're unable to do, call it out ahead of time in the beginning of the sales cycle. Let the customers know. I think it's our responsibility to set the right expectation, but also not to overpromise and underdeliver. Much more rather, underpromise and overdeliver in that case. So I think just listening to our buyers here, understanding what they care for. And again, there is so much information out there on the web. Lots of our customers are probably aware of our strengths and weaknesses before they even conduct business and conduct a conversation with us. So know that going into a conversation and use that as leverage to have a productive outcome. But I think active listening here is key because it really helps us understand what's going on in our customer's environment and where there's a potential to help position a solution to solve for a pain or a need that they have.
Gotcha. There's a great conversation happening in the Q&A, not just with questions, but also with people sharing their experiences. And so let's open this up a little bit to a conversation, right? So for example, we have a guest named Joe. Joe, we've been using your name a lot today. He writes that the reality is that people don't meet anymore. They hide by screening calls, ignoring emails. You don't just reach people in large organizations today. The issue, which has not been addressed, is how to get around that. It's not a matter of who to sell to, it's an issue of how do you get them to engage? That's a really that's a really good question. It's hard to get people to engage. Right. So let's quickly talk about approach.
Right. So everybody approaches when they need something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got an email inbox full of needs and wants and desires. Nobody giving me anything. Nobody helping me. Yeah. So what do reps do? They don't call the CEO until they need something from them. And the CEO has no interest in fulfilling your needs.
Mm-hmm.
Sales is a giving profession. It's not a taking profession.
Yep.
So you're going to need to talk to these people. Why do you wait to the last week of the quarter to start that relationship?
Mm-hmm. That's true. I always, I've been doing sales enablement for a big part of my career, and I always am a big believer in you don't want to give. I love content, but not about our company content. I love content that helps, right?
Yes.
And so I, for example, always really like the approach of, hey, this blog post really made me think of you specifically and what we were talking about on that conversation. Especially when you're selling to a big organization, that makes it consultative. That makes it a much more relationship driven.
Right. If you treat the complex sale like the simple sale, you'll never have any success unless you're order taking. The complex sale is complex for a lot of reasons. And what people do is they follow the CRM. They go discovery, call, demo, present, propose, negotiate, close. That's how it works, right? But where do the deals die? Right after you send that proposal.
Yeah.
If you want to kill a deal, send a proposal. They'll never call you back because they think they have everything. You're treating it like a transaction. The complex sale is a transformation.
Yeah.
If I was selling you a piece of marketing software, it's a journey we're going on together. Here's how marketing works today. Here's how it could work. Let's go on that journey together.
So proposals are where deals die, Brian?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you have just finished a conversation and we've got to proposal time.
No.
What do you do? What do you do?
You are not ready to give a proposal. You can tell them the price. You can email them some ideas. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying don't give the price or be cagey about it. Right. I'm saying that formal proposal that they ask for, that they want. And then what happens? Oh, can you get me 10 points off of that? Mm-hmm. And then the next person, 10 points, 10 points, 10 points. And all of a sudden it's 90 points. It's not a transaction. It's a transformation. Mm-hmm. They're not ready for a proposal, nor can they do anything with it. Mm-hmm. And why would they call you back unless they want something?
So then in practicalities, would it, but if somebody comes in and says, I need a proposal, I need to run this up the flagpole, I need a proposal. So yeah, not be caged. You have no choice. You're back against the wall. You have to send a proposal.
Why? Why? You're killing your deal. You just say, let me tell you what's going to happen. Mm. The manager's going to smile and nod and say, okay, well, I'll see what I can do with this. Uh-huh. And you know what he's going to do with it?
Ignore it.
Ignore it until you ask again.
But I'm gonna challenge you here, okay? Because literally, this is a conversation that happened with one of my people last week, right? We really wanted a SaaS solution. We knew the value of it. I knew, because I'm a little seasoned about it. I'm like, I need you to get a proposal in my hand, and I need a competing proposal for this to move. And I couldn't move it up the flagpole without having something physical in my hand, right? Like there's a procurement process that happens, right? So our salesperson didn't know that we actually already made the decision on that. In that case, we were in the salesperson's favor. We want to buy this tool. We're going to ask for a proposal to move it forward. You're back against the wall. I need to send, so what do you do?
I would ask you, okay, are you sure our product is the right fit? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm sure your product is the right fit.
And what pushback do you think you're going to get from procurement or your CEO?
Pricing.
Okay.
Right.
Great. So instead of going this, how about if we have a call? I'll get the person who can get you at the best price on the phone on my end. If you can do me a favor and get the person on your end that's going to give the pushback. I can't give you at a better price. Mm-hmm. So I'm giving you the wrong price if I give you a proposal.
I love that. George, what do you think? Do you think, have you tried that? Have you done something like that before?
I have, always. I think when it comes down to like, cost is the most important thing, I think that's a red flag right away. I want to steer that away, because if it's a race to the bottom, we'll lose every day of the week. It's not even a fair fight. But I also know there's a massive risk for the business that they can be potentially or they will be choosing the wrong solution. And often too many times we see these folks coming back to us 3 months later, having that same conversation again. So I think it's on us to, again, educate our customers, understand the risk of this, and also trying to get creative to get to power and have a conversation with them on what they're looking to truly extract out of a vendor or solution. Outside of pricing, what is the most important thing? What's a must-have, a non-negotiable that you need to do? And why are we even looking for a solution in the first place, right?
Because I want to try to. So sorry to cut you off. We've got about 12 minutes left. I want to do a little rapid fire Q&A from the very active, lovely, and attentive attendees here. So I want to go a little bit quick. So let's say urgency has been brought up. How do you push urgency politely when prospects go dark?
Use their timeline, not yours. Everybody thinks once they order it, they get the benefit in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
No, let's say you're buying a new marketing automation or some AI thing that predicts something.
Yep.
You want the benefit, the outcome of it. When do you want that?
Right away. Right.
So right away is now, but it takes 3 months to implement, train, customize, feed the AI. Okay, so now we're talking the end of the year.
Yeah.
Do you feel more urgency now?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Brian. Great answer. Okay. So
I think what'll help too, to add, is understanding the risk of doing nothing. Who's impacting? They tried to fix this before, and what happened? How long it's been going on for? And really quantifying that pain. So when you are getting pushback, you're using that timeline plus the cost of doing nothing as a way to kind of create a sense of urgency around fixing, the problem.
Cool. So another person asking, how do we decomplexify our discussions when they think multi-level implications are needed, but really not? So like I think what this person's trying to ask is, some people make it more complicated than it is, right? Like, so how do you kind of talk through that with a person? Does that question make sense?
A little bit. Maybe you can give me an example. Maybe George knows better.
I'm going to make an assumption here, but I would just simply ask why. Like, why does it have to be so complex? Because, it's possible that the person that you're speaking with on the other end has gone through a complex buying cycle. And at that point, if you can understand why, then it maps out what the execution plan is going to be like to get it in place. So just listening to our buyers and just asking questions back to them, understand the why, where, when, the who, and how.
Part journalist, part therapist. Okay, let's get into there. How would you lock in the sale signature or acknowledgement before the purchase order is issued by the prospect? How would you lock in the sale? That's a very, very specific question.
You can ask for it, but it's not legally binding until you get it. And until you get it, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Letter of intent. Forget. It's just not real.
Let's do one last one, and then we'll do takeaways. Okay. So my customers typically have multiple ownership parts, right? Like HR, ops, and IT. What is the best way to determine who has the budget decision power?
Well, you probably run into this all the time because you've got marketing enablement, marketing operations, marketing, and who do you sell to? Well, my process would typically start with the problem owner. Who has the emotional connection to the problem that I solve? They can kind of coach me and guide me about, where's this money coming from? This is different for every company. Let's have an example. Like if you have some sales enablement tool, sales gets no budget. Sales enablement gets the budget. Marketing gets the budget. Sales is there to make money.
Yeah.
So selling to the VP of sales, good. But you get interest, you get desire, but you don't get revenue.
Yep.
Enablement doesn't understand the problem, doesn't care because no one's coming to them, banging them on the head. I need this.
Yep.
You kind of got to pattern match. How has it worked in the past, positively and negatively?
Yep.
Like everybody in security sells to the CISO.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk to a CISO, they go, until someone comes screaming into my office saying they need something, I'm just curious about how this stuff works. I don't make the decisions. I let these people come to me. There's too much stuff.
Yep. Makes sense. So we're coming up at time. This has been, so I want each of you, please, to just give, if the attendees today had one takeaway, like one thing they should take away from this conversation, what do you want that to be? Brian?
We may know how to sell. Our clients do not know how to buy. And it's our job to teach them. If we don't know how, we have to learn first. Because this is the biggest competitor you have. It's not the ones that you see on the Gartner sheet or the G2 matrix. They're on the front end of it, but you have to get a deal done. You only get paid on the deals you finish, not participate in.
George?
I would say know your market, know how your solution solves the problems, do your research, pre-call prep. And I think just think about every statement that you make, ask yourself the question of like, what's in it for the customer? Is this a self-serving question, or is this geared to help my prospect paint the picture of how we can help solve the solution? I think with the abundance of information out there on the web today, our buyers are coming to us well aware of with an assumption of how we might help solve some of these problems. I think it's on us to like make the assumption that there is going to be oversight over purchasing decisions and get ahead of the buying cycle by, again, like Brian said, guiding this buying, teaching our prospects how our solution is purchased.
Great. So, and I know there were a lot of questions, everybody. We promise every single person who asked a question, we will follow up with an answer. But we are almost at time. I always like to give people an extra 5 minutes. So they like us before they go to their next meeting and they have a second to like breathe and have a drink. So I really want to thank both of you. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been enlightening for me for sure. I'm sure for everybody who attended. Thank you, everybody who attended. And yeah, let's do this again soon.
Great. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Bye, everybody.